Chapter
9.
Chapter 9.
Celebrating belonging and becoming. The fun part.
The fun part.
Yeah, bringing it all together.
I like that quote. Celebrate what you want to see more of.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Good job, Tom Peters.
Yeah, just acknowledging what students do right can never be wrong. I thought that was a good way to start it out because that was just kind of what it was all about for the most part of the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you can overdo that though, celebrating what you want to see more of?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it talks about that a lot later, like in the chapter, like especially with like the reward systems and stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think there's definitely a balance to everything, but then it kind of balances it out whenever it says acknowledging what the students do right can never be wrong. So like there's
Right.
never like a cup amount where you should say, oh, I should probably stop saying what they're doing right, because then
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, it was like interesting to hear because like you always want to like reinforce when students do well, but then like they were saying that at times you like when you verbalize it so often it just like doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time you just have to like find an easy middle because like I don't believe that you shouldn't verbalize anything because
Yeah.
then you just you're not a supportive
Mm-hmm.
like figure, but
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I highlighted the quote that on the next page, 186, that was on the side. It says, when there is an intentional plan to look for, notice, appreciate, and celebrate students' growth in positive directions, it's good for everyone at the school. And I think that this is something that a lot of schools struggle with, is like whole school positivity. Because especially even in a small school, it's easy to be lost in, the sea of kids that walk from class to class. Like in the classrooms, there's at least 20 kids in a classroom, so it can be really hard to, especially if you're shy or if you're an introvert, it's hard to like feel noticed. And so I think if you are intentional as a teacher to notice your students in the classroom as they filter in and out, then it makes it a lot easier for the students to feel recognized and noticed.
Yeah, I think also like kind of going along with that is like it plays right into like the rapport that you have with your kids because like you need to be able to acknowledge like what is above and beyond for Jimmy might not be what above and beyond is for Johnny the extrovert when Jimmy's an introvert. You know what I'm saying?
True.
Like you just have to be able like to acknowledge when someone that's introverted does something like way out of their comfort zone. That's when you might want to acknowledge, but it's different for each person.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They kind of talked about that and the deciding what to celebrate.
Mm-hmm.
So all those bullet points are pretty interesting.
Yeah, I highlighted some ones that it mentioned in the other chapters, like feel like they have a voice in the school, trust their teachers and peers, feel wanted and needed. Those are just some of the ones that I feel like we've talked about in the past chapters that are important.
Yeah, I starred like a lot of the things that they said. Likewise, if you believe that your students are becoming when they blank, like it all just had to do with like growth. Like it wasn't necessarily like just getting a problem right or something like that. It just like you want to highlight when they start here and then they've grown. That's when you want to make sure that they know that they're doing something right.
Definitely. Develop was the beginning word, the verb in a lot of these, especially on the right side was develop, demonstrate, develop.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of growth.
Right. Another cool thing with all those is just like it wasn't all school centered stuff. It was just like kind of character and they said compassionate and stuff like that. Like that's other stuff that you want to look for in your students.
It's when you're
not just
more than just a teacher.
Right.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
There's a lot of bullet points, so I was like, all right, next page.
Read a couple of them.
Yeah.
What we got next?
I really liked the next like little set of bullet points because this is where like teachers, administrators, and students, and, like where they all like can feed off of these things. Like develop trusting, caring teacher, student, and adult relationships because like that can tear up a school. Like if your faculty's like there's like two sides. Like if there's like I don't know like some scandal. Like I remember. Well, no, like my school, they don't like to hire like married couples, like at least in the same building, because one of the teachers got divorced. And, like,
Oh
it was pretty nasty, and
That's
so like
tough.
there was
half
like
the
a
teachers are sporting the one.
pretty
teacher,
much,
half
yeah.
the teachers sporting the other.
pretty
teacher.
much,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
that took a long time to heal that.
Mhm. Yeah. I've had a lot of married teachers actually.
My parents
Be a
worked
part.
together, and they
Yeah.
and they both teachers.
Yeah. I had 2 that were right across the hall from each other.
Really?
The Grote houses, yeah. And I was
See,
like,
I don't know if
"Oh."
that's a good.
No, it's
That's
I mean,
pretty
me
close.
personally, I'd be like, "Hey, honey, like, how are you doing?"
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That'd
don't
be a
know.
lot. But at least you know that they have a good adult-to-adult relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, for the
Right.
most part,
Uh-huh.
like, you know, they're married, so then they're a team, and then they can, like, pull together other teams. But I understand what you mean. Like, whenever a rift happens, or if, like, you become, like,
Yeah.
really good friends with somebody, and then something goes on, or, you know, it can be really
Yeah.
tough. So I think it's good to, like, have this be a goal no matter what happens in adult relationships. Like, we have to be friendly for the students.
It would be hard to keep school life and home life separate at that rate.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. I thought it was kind of interesting what they were like down at the bottom of 190 when they
Mhm.
were talking about rethinking and then the recognitions and rewards. They said a major conclusion of this research is that outside of rewards often undermine students' intrinsic motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And then it made me think like when I was in elementary school, did you guys do AR points?
We
Yeah.
didn't, but I
They-
taught them, yeah.
Right. Okay. So like basically, we would read the books and take tests and get points or whatever.
Mhm.
And then in our basement of our little middle school or elementary school, we had like the AR like reward room, and it
Wow.
was just like all these like different like little toys and stuff like
Mhm.
that with like numbers on them. It was like going to an arcade and like getting your
Wow.
tickets and stuff like that. But it kind of like. And when you look at it from this perspective, it's like kind of a bad thing, like because that was the only thing I was working for. Like I didn't care about the books I was reading.
Yeah.
I probably just like looked them up, and actually I know I did. I just looked them up and then tried to do well on the test so I could get the points type thing. So
Mhm. Yeah. And that's, I think, it talks a lot about that, like, in this chapter.
Mhm.
Definitely.
I remember my elementary. I highly doubt they do this now because I don't know why, but we did it for good grades and good behavior.
Mhm.
Like you got your tickets or whatever, and so it was really cool. Like there was we had no classes for an hour, and all of the students would line up and we'd just wait to go in,
Mhm.
and shop around and then get out.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah, maybe they moved on. I guess it was like
Yeah.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
Make
they
me
still
sound
have,
so old.
no, the school I had, they had that. I mean, but it was like Eagle Bucks or whatever, like whatever they did
Uh-huh.
well, they got money, and then somebody with a cart would come in Fridays and say hey, does anybody want anything? And,
Right.
they'd have to get up and go do it, and it was kind of disruptive. But I mean,
Yeah.
I understand why kids want to do it.
Right.
Because it says there's no question that young children have self-motivation. Like they know what they're doing and they know what they're working for. But then on the next page it says the roots of self-motivation is one's belief that she has the power over her own life and affect changes in her life, and that she's able to create that satisfaction of success for herself. So I think that it's good to have that feeling of success and to have I did it, I get to have a tangible reward in my hands, but at the same time, what you were saying, what's being built in
Mhm.
those reward systems that is kind
Yeah.
of toxic and not really great,
It puts emphasis on the outcome, not necessarily the process of getting
Exactly.
there type thing.
Exactly.
Let's see what else we got here.
And extrinsic rewards can lead to behaviors that are the exact opposite of what we hope to encourage.
Right.
Yeah.
It's weird thinking about it that way because, I feel like a lot of teachers go in with the mindset of, all right, well, whatever I need to do, whether it's, throwing them a piece of candy every time they do something
Mhm.
right type thing. But I guess once your students get older, it's not really a good thing you want to instill in them.
I remember one field every question you answered, the teacher would give you a piece of candy or
Rotten as kids' teeth.
there's the jar, just go get what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it gets participation for sure.
Yeah,
but-
for sure. Definitely for sure. And maybe that's what they're looking at, especially with
Yeah.
younger ages. I can assume that
Yeah, 'cause it was
getting
it was
getting
fifth
participation is good. Yeah. But on the next page, the 192, it says praise can become so generalized, repetitive, and automatic that it loses its authenticity.
Mhm.
And I think that's something you were saying earlier. good job, well done. Like sometimes, especially in like our day and age, which sounds weird, in our day and age, I think sarcasm is a really big like part of kids' humor, but
Mhm.
also like my humor. Like I try to be, a little sarcastic with my kids because like they like to see that I'm like them or like that I can relate.
Mhm.
But I think sometimes like if they say, did I do well on this? You can say like, oh, good job. Like it can sound like sarcastic,
Right.
which you don't mean it to, but like sometimes it can. And I think that this is what it's saying. It becomes automatic and like generalized.
I think that's when you would be like overdoing it, but not so much overdoing, but overusing it.
Yeah,
Be like, oh, Mr. King is saying good job. He says that every single
every time.
day.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
And then it just like kind of goes back. Like I know they talked about it at some point, but then you just need to really just not generalize it as much and only use it whenever they go above and beyond for like their individual self. Like
yeah,
I thought it was interesting when they were saying how it can be manipulative,
mm-hmm.
reinforcing something that is like that word. It was not something that I would
It's
have.
just evil.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Manipulative.
am I really manipulating them by telling them they're doing good? Like I just thought that was an interesting way to say that. Like dependent on the adult's convenience or feelings. Cuz like I know that all kids like to be told that they're doing
Mhm.
well, but I mean I was like thinking about it, I was like, man,
I
that's
think what
an
that means
odd
is
word.
like you are forcing them to do things that make you as a teacher happy. Like, and they could go home and they'd be like doing everything like the parents ask for. Like, parents aren't getting anything. Like, what? Like, you're
Yeah.
confusing them, and like later in life.
Mhm.
I mean, granted, you want to like respect your elders and like
Yeah.
do a good job, but like don't just like follow somebody and just do everything
Yeah.
that they tell you to do.
Yeah, a lot of these were really interesting because I was like looking at them from that perspective, going
Mhm.
like, oh, is that the way that is? Like, it can create praise junkies, which means like they're dependent on the evaluation. So like that isn't. Whereas like our evaluation is important. Like they don't need our praise to like do well. Like they deserve it,
Mhm.
but like they don't need it in order to do what they're supposed to do. Because like we talked about earlier, like they should be doing it anyway.
Right.
Like they don't need to be. Or maybe that's in the future, but and then like it can steal a child's pleasure. Like a child deserves to take delight in her accomplishments and feel pride in what she's learned to do. She also deserves to decide when to feel that way. So like, I'm like, how do I know whether or not she wants to feel that way?
Right.
Like, good job, honey, and then she's like,
Mm.
I don't want that right now. Like, how am I supposed to
Right.
know that? Like, that was just very interesting.
Or maybe they don't like the way when I read that I was like, well, maybe they don't know that they're like, how do they know that they got the question right or they're doing a good job if you don't tell them that they're doing a
Yeah.
good job type thing. So it's like I don't know. I just feel like it might be different for every classroom or with
Mhm.
each student, but
Yeah.
there's an interesting take there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the next page they just kind of talked about not giving, not giving rewards when tasks that you like should expect to be done every day, like coming in if you want to get your journal out, like, and if it's like an everyday thing, like you shouldn't tell them great job every time that they do something that's expected of them. But that's kind of like it's just built on the climate that you make your classroom, like what your expectations and like standards are for.
Because if it's just something that they should, like it's routine, then like, yeah, they shouldn't expect praise if it's
Mhm.
routine,
But then when they do something out of the
Out of
ordinary,
the ordinary, yeah.
right?
I think maybe like when it comes to routine, like you know how like teachers will have like a big prize at the end of the year or like the end of the quarter if you like turn all your homework in on time,
Mhm.
like something like that. Like not just every day, like oh you can get a piece of candy.
Right.
You got
Each
your homework
assignment.
done. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's too expensive for the teacher.
Yeah, true. Something that I thought was really interesting that I thought of like right away. It says like on 195, of course we want to avoid recognition and rewards that diminish the student's self-belief and self-motivation. We don't want them to become addicted to getting prized for something that they should be doing anyway.
Yeah.
I was tutoring a second grade class, and they were learning reading fluency. And in the classroom, the teacher would give these things called brain beads, and they were just beads, like little beads. and if they read a certain passage like with this many errors, or like read a whole passage fluently, or just did well, they got a brain bead. And so they got these like strings hanging from the wall basically, where they would just have beads. And so every time I would tutor this one kid, do I get a brain bead? Do I get a brain bead? Every single time. And I was like, literally, you're learning to read. Like, you should be giving me something. Like, I'm teaching you how to read. And
That's
you
your
know,
brain bead.
and so that's your brain bead. It's
Yeah.
knowledge, like, so he should be reading anyways. He should have been learning how to read fluently anyway. It was just something that was kind of like a little, release of dopamine in his head, that he could be like, oh man, I got a brain bead. Like, oh man,
Right.
maybe it was competition. I don't know. But like either
buy
way,
your own beats and give yourself one.
here you go, buy your own. Like, yeah, it was just, he should be learning to read anyway. He shouldn't be getting rewarded for something that he should know how to do.
Yeah.
But that was just interesting. So I was like, I never thought about that before. Because I would be like, yeah, you can have a brain bead. Like, because I just didn't think about it.
No, that's true. Yeah, no, this next part was, I liked the beginning of it, just saying, so what do we do? Because, like, after getting to this point, I was like, okay, so we're not supposed to tell them they're doing well, but you also need to tell them sometimes that they're doing well. So I was like, where's my middle ground here? But no, all these points were pretty good and kind of
Yeah, they were.
put you in the right direction.
Yeah, like pay close attention all day, every day to what we say and do. Like, don't give double standards and say like, oh, this kid gets this kid gets this. Like, make sure that it's holistic, but also like trying to avoid using rewards as incentives. Use tangible rewards. Give recognition more than tangible rewards.
Mm-hmm.
Adapt the rewards to individuals.
Right.
So like you were saying earlier, the introverted kid should get something different than, or different type of praise than the extroverted kid.
That's not to say that, like, class reward is good too. Like, if everyone, turns their permission slips in, like, having whatever, like, you do for your class. Like, I don't think that's a bad thing
No,
necessarily,
absolutely
but, like, it's an interesting way to think about it, kind of.
And then it kind of goes on to behavior, the next page, where it says, like, help students understand the meaning and value of their behavior. So, like, how are they acting? Why are they acting that way? Like, if you turn in your permission slips, why are we having you have a reward for doing that? Is it because we're trying to teach you to be responsible? Yeah. We're trying to teach you to be timely, responsible, and, get your stuff in. And so I think that knowing why we're giving the reward makes it more valuable.
I think that's also like how you said, like, I don't know, I just thought of like turning in like a permission slip for some reason and like turning it in on time. I think that's where you also need to like be willing to take away stuff. Be like, sometimes in life you don't turn it in, you don't get it.
Yeah.
Like there's no late slip.
Yeah, that's true.
The whole chapter was on reward, but then it's so funny because there's a complete opposite side to rewards, which is when kids don't do the stuff that you want them to do.
It's kind of like positive and negative consequences, because usually when you think consequence, you think bad, but there's also positive consequences of things. So like,
I mean, you can get a bad reward every now and then.
Yeah, you can. A bad grade, you're welcome.
Yeah, there's your reward.
Yeah.
I'll draw a line so that F looks like an A.
My dad always said that you always have to remind your students who grades their papers. Like,
That's true, yeah.
At the end of the day, like, come on, like, you know who takes these papers home at the end of the night.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Another bullet that was good, I thought, was ask students questions that help them reflect on their successes. So, like, if a kid doesn't normally do something well and then he does do something well, you can sit down and be like, okay, so what changed? Like, so they can do that action again, type thing.
Definitely. Yeah, there's a lot. I like the bullet points a lot, and especially with like the how to celebrate, how to encourage the positive behavior, like those charts that you could use to like track behavior, especially for those kids that need the behavior tracking. Like younger kids, I feel like need it more than older kids, but once they get into like 7th and 8th grade, like maybe they need a behavior chart that each teacher needs to sign, So I think that's really good.
Yeah. And then when they talked about just school-wide plans, I thought they had a bunch of good stuff in there, because that can be kind of the root of everything that you do in your classroom. Is what you
Definitely.
decide to do with everyone or your administration.
Definitely. A lot of good stuff to take away. Stuff I didn't know.
Yeah.
That's good.
Very good.
Anything to add, Jake?
Not really.
It's been a pleasure, boys.
Yeah.
It's
Cutting that last part out.
been real.